Hello, I'm Corey Cagle, and I'm going to cover the route from Ronald Reagan National Airport to Burlington, Vermont, Burlington International, with a connection in Newark, New Jersey. This is a route overview, and the analysis that we used goes both directions. We didn't analyze the route in only one direction, so it goes both ways. Starting with Burlington International, it's a medium-sized airport classified by the FAA due to its capabilities and size. It was established very early in the 1900s, 1937, so it's a very old airport servicing the Northeast. And it has a relatively low competition level because it does have very limited terminal and gate areas, and it services the three legacy carriers, American, Delta, United, and a couple additional carriers, which kind of rotate through. Sun Country Airlines is a seasonal destination. JetBlue has come and gone, and now they're back at the Burlington International Airport. And Burlington International only has service to 13 destinations for nonstop service. Here's the destination map that is offered for direct flights out of Burlington. As you can see, most of them are East Coast, some of them branch to the Midwest and western part of the US, but largely it's only regional flights on the eastern seaboard. So a little bit about Burlington. It's located in Burlington, Vermont. Its immediate population in Burlington is about 44,781 per the Census Bureau. The overall population of Vermont is 645,000, but we can also probably include some population from New Hampshire and northern New York due to the limited competing airports in the region. The population of Vermont is estimated to have grown by only 0.4% in this census year, so it's very low growth, and hence the airport probably is not seeing a whole lot of increase in activity or growth. And overall, economic activity is super low in Vermont. It's ranked lowest in the country in GDP. Ronald Reagan National, Washington National, has an expansive flight line with 36 gates, so it's quite a bit larger than Burlington. It was established shortly after Burlington, however, in 1941. It's in a very central area, especially being in Washington, D.C. is a highly populated and busy area, but it's in the tri-state area around Pennsylvania, New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, and Virginia also, which is all that is the greater tri-state area. But the population is massive in those areas. It services generally the same carriers that Burlington does, with the addition of Alaska Airlines as a legacy carrier now, and the major additional airlines that they service domestically is Frontier, JetBlue, Southwest, and Air Canada. And they offer nonstop service to a lot more destinations, with 101 destinations for nonstop service. Here's an overview map of service from Washington. This includes nonstop service as well as all of their destinations that they offer. Washington National Airport is located in Washington, D.C., with a local area population that's about the size of Vermont, the entire state, at 670,000 per the census. The greater area, however, is estimated about 6.3 million, and that includes the Arlington and the greater areas around. You have Baltimore and a lot of cities in close proximity to Washington, D.C. And the population of Washington, D.C. itself is estimated to have decreased by 2.8% in this census year, 2020 and 2021. So it's a little bit misleading just to go by that stat because of the greater area that this airport is able to service. A quick look at demographics. We see Burlington is a very not a very diverse population, whereas Washington, D.C., you have a huge spread where you're comparing white alone in Vermont, 84.8%, where white alone in Washington, D.C. is 45.9%. We didn't see where this plays in due to the nature of the route as a leisure and maybe only a business type route. It's not really a tourist destination generally in Burlington, Vermont, and neither is Washington, D.C. It's probably more of a professional route, political, stuff like that, and connecting flights, of course. Look at some economic data. On the left, we have Burlington, Vermont, and the formatting is a little bit off. I apologize for that. So on the left, we have Burlington, Vermont, and the right is Washington, D.C. We have similar numbers in participating workforce, 64% in Vermont, 70% in Washington, D.C. Obviously, there's more opportunity in Washington, D.C. than Vermont. And although they don't rank, they do rank in the bottom half of GDP as well. However, cost of living is a lot more. So the final stat there, median household income in 2020, is super misleading. That dollar amount is not equal to being double in Washington, D.C. It's probably a fraction. It's a lot more expensive to live in Washington, D.C., so the median household income is a little misleading here. A little bit about United Airlines that services this route. Their ICAO is UAL. They have 354 destinations around the world. They service 48 countries. They employ roughly 88,000 employees around the world. Their hubs are Chicago, Denver, Newark, San Francisco, Dulles, and Houston. United Airlines, we chose them because they're one of the largest airlines today. They're in the top 500 Fortune 500 companies. They're ranked about 200 probably. United is a legacy carrier that serviced 69.4 million passengers in 2021, which on the next slide we'll see it's actually not that impressive. So as United recovers from COVID-19, the following load factors is what we've been tracking for the airline. So we only went back to 2015 because the stats were not that important before that, because there wasn't a large swing. This image here is only to portray what happened during COVID. So the load factor before COVID was roughly 84%. It fluctuated between 82 to 84% roughly. In 2020, after COVID-19 hit, the load factor dropped effectively to 60.2%. And we would also see within a few months of 2020, the load factor was much lower than that. And in 2021, the most recent year we have data for, the recovery has started for airlines with 72.2% for United Airlines on their load factor. In 2019, United Airlines serviced a record number of passengers. This was their peak ever recorded at 116.2 million passengers transported. Unfortunately, after 2019, COVID-19 hit in late that year and effectively took hold on the United States airline industry in 2020, and United saw the lowest passenger number recorded in the 2000s, and that was at 37.8 million passengers, down from 116 million the year before. So the equipment we see on this route is generally would be to right size this route would be a CRJ 700, CRJ 900, Embraer 175 or 170. Generally, we're seeing this CRJ 700 and Embraer 175s as a more popular aircraft. They see 70 and 76 passengers. The airlines that use the CRJ 550, for example, have opted to go away from that for reasons of load factor on those is so much lower. While you have your load factor may look better based on the number of seats that you have, the plane is not comfortable anyway. So decreasing the amount of seats in order to try to increase a little bit of comfort isn't worth it for the airlines. And the CRJ 700 has been the right fit for this route for a long time. And we'll take a quick look at load factor on both destinations, and this compares a couple other destinations and their load factor to see and kind of visualize how these stack up. So the Washington to Newark route looks like it's about 70% load factor, and we compared that with Cleveland and Chicago destinations from the Washington route, and they're relatively close, with Chicago being a lot higher, around 78% maybe, because it is a hub. It's a much larger airport than Cleveland. On the Burlington side, we compared Burlington to Newark, and then Burlington to Dulles, and Burlington to Chicago. We had very limited options to compare on this because Burlington has so few destinations, with only 13 destinations that they're servicing. We had to choose the right-sized ones that would compete with, or potentially compete with, Washington. And we see that the Newark route is the lowest load factor, again, of all of the routes that we were able to compare. When we look at the load factor by departures, this is a theoretical forecasted information here. So what we did was we took the actual departures from Washington at 7 departures right now, and we were able to forecast where would we reach our maximum load factor. And as we reduced departures, we theoretically increased load factor nearly to 100% at 5 departures. Unfortunately, this information would be skewed because this is less departures, less options for people to fly out with United, and would potentially cause scheduling conflicts, and who knows what times those departures would end up being, which would open the door for competition at those airports. So the fact that they're close to 75% load factor at the moment is actually probably the right size and the right amount of seats filled that they want to achieve. If you end up increasing more flights, giving passengers more options, there's no proof that we're actually going to see more passenger travel. The Burlington side to Newark, we're almost neck and neck with the baseline departures, where there's only 5 from Burlington. So close to 75% again, and we increased our load factor to probably about 91%, maybe a little less, 88%. And at 4 departures, and unfortunately, decreasing one more departure puts us above 100% load factor, which is not possible. It's not possible for us to carry more than 100% capacity of our aircraft, so we remove that statistics from the display. This graphic covers the other routes that generally would compete with the connecting flight getting you to Washington. As you can see, there's 3 immediate routes in the area that will compete. LaGuardia, JFK, and there's one other one. The 3 outliers, Detroit, Chicago, Charlotte, those are all United destinations. However, they're out of the way. They would likely cause scheduling conflicts, or they would be less convenient for passengers. It would be more expensive for the flight, and the short flights, the short legs between Washington, Newark, and Burlington are ideal. They're like 45 minutes or so, and it's a good time frame for a CRJ 700 passenger. Much more time than that can become unpleasant, and the airline would have to look into right sizing of the aircraft for the distance also. Passengers don't like to sit on a CRJ 700 for too long of a period of time. It's a very cramped aircraft. And overall, our conclusions have come to Burlington needs to continue to improve their capacity, their services, their amenities, everything. The limited footprint that they have, the limited number of gates that they have, and the fact that the standoff from the taxi area to the terminal is super small, basically eliminates any size aircraft above a small medium haul aircraft from being able to taxi into Burlington. Burlington offers no low-cost carrier options, which is good for the legacy carriers, but it's poor for the travelers. It creates almost no competition for legacy carriers here, which is probably a poor thing for the population that wants to fly, considering the average household income is low and there's not a whole lot of economic activity in Vermont. So without that growth, there's not a lot of travel. There's also not a lot of incentive for the budget airlines to move in there and offer destinations that otherwise you'd be flying a connection through Newark or other places to get there. The routes are currently right sized with the equipment used and the number of flights, and there could be some possible tweaks made. However, keeping the load factor where it's at right now, keeping the number of departures where it's at, would be good, because flights are increasing through post-COVID, and it's important that we maintain the ability to expand and not limit our passengers' options. And that concludes our presentation.